Hi, I'm John Quigley, President and CEO of the Elmhurst Chamber of Commerce and Industry. In these challenging economic times, it's imperative that our residents and businesses band together to not only shop Elmhurst, but buy Elmhurst whenever possible. We have great stores in our city center, Spring Road, Butterfield Road, York and Villette Streets, St. Charles and Route 83, North Avenue and Lake Street, along North York and even Grand Avenue. I ask for your help. Let's keep our tax dollars in Elmhurst.
Visit Elmhurst.org to explore the new City of Elmhurst website. Find out the latest Elmhurst news, pay utility bills and parking tickets, report concerns, and much more. Elmhurst.org is an ideal way to discover what Elmhurst offers your business, your family, your life.
My second child has special needs, and I worked with him for 10 years, and I kind of thought I'm pretty good at this, so maybe I missed my calling. So I decided to go back to school and get my master's in early childhood special ed. Originally, I just was going to get a teaching certificate, but when I looked into it further, Elmhurst had this great program that I could do both in 2 years, and it was an adult education program. The classes were all at night, and so I thought, let's do it. I think the hardest part was just making that phone call. Within the first month of starting classes, you're out there in the community, you're working with people. After 2 years of doing it, you really get that confidence. So when you graduate, you really do feel like you're a leader in your field, which is what they told us we would be. And so it's true. It really, really is.
Welcome to Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, and along with Mayor Pete DeCiani, we're going to be talking about two things Elmhurst College Jazz and Elmhurst College Theater. And in our first segment, we have arranger, composer, Grammy winner, and director of jazz studies and the jazz band, Doug Beach, with us. And Doug, welcome to Elmhurst Now. And I want to start with a real basic question, and that is, how long have you been at Elmhurst College?
Well, it's been a long time, Ken. This is 34 years now. So, yeah, feels like not that long, but it's been a while.
And there was a jazz band when you arrived, or was that your creation?
There was, actually. No, there was a gentleman leading it who was, believe it or not, my grade school band director. And he was also teaching over Proviso West High School. That was his real job, full-time job, but he was an adjunct. And he got to the point where he just, didn't have time anymore, and I had just come back in off the road from playing for a few years, and he said, would you like to do this as an adjunct? And I said, yep, I sure would. And from there, it's been 34 years, so it's been great. And
of course it morphs into full-time, and then the
Yes.
jazz studies program emerged. Now that's not nearly as old.
No, we have a jazz studies degree now, which we've had, I think, for about 6 years, if I've got that right. I think it's about 6 years now, where you can major in jazz studies, and we also have a minor in jazz studies. And because of that, we now have 2 jazz bands, and we have 11 combos, and we have 2 vocal jazz groups and 2 guitar ensembles. And yeah, it's a lot more than just a one band, which it was when we started. So it's great. We've got great kids, and they work hard, and they care about what we do. So it's really great.
So you mentioned all those groups. Now, I know the music department itself has grown tremendously over the last decade or so. How many music majors in total?
I believe we have somewhere between 230 and 240 music majors there now. And when I started there were 43. So you're right, the growth has been astronomical.
It's incredible. I know as a former alum, the jazz band has always been a nationally acclaimed group that the college has been always proud of. But you also produce a great jazz festival. And how long ago was that festival started?
Well, the festival is about to have its 45th year.
Wow.
And so that's a pretty big deal, too. It's the second oldest continuous collegiate festival in the country, second only to Notre Dame. They've had one a little bit longer than us. But ours really, I think, has emerged to be one of the premier, if not the premier, collegiate festivals in the country. And schools come from all over. We've got a group coming from New Orleans this year. We've had groups from Boston College have joined us the last few years. We've got from all over the Midwest states, 6 or 8 states around us. And we may even have, we're not completely sure yet, but there may be a group coming from the Czech Republic this year. So some friends we made when the band was on a tour over there. So that would bring an international dimension to it, which we haven't had yet. So.
Well, now it started as a real competition, and I don't want to suggest that it's not a competition now, but it started as a national competition, and then it morphed into what it is today. Can you provide a little more background?
Yeah, absolutely. What you said is very much correct. There was something in the late 1960s called the American College Jazz Festival, and there were 8 regional sites throughout the country, of which Elmhurst was one of the sites. So if you were a college jazz band director and you wanted to be a part of this, you would take your group or groups to the nearest regional site. As I said, the Midwest people would come to Elmhurst. And the winning jazz band, the winning combo, and the winning vocalist all got an expense-paid trip to the finals, which happened at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And there was some pretty heavy corporate money behind it back then. American Express, American Airlines, I think Budweiser might have been behind it a little bit too. And, but that all kind of expired in 1972, actually. And in 1973, there were some, I think, forward-thinking people on our campus who said, why don't we just keep this as our own jazz festival? And it became the Elmhurst College Jazz Festival, and went forward from there. So,
you want to just take a shot at some of the big names that folks watching us would recognize that have been at that festival?
It's really something. The history is huge. Dizzy Gillespie has been there. Cannonball Adderley, who played on some of Miles Davis's recordings, has been there. Diana Krall has performed there. Maynard Ferguson has performed there. The list goes on. Dee Dee Bridgewater. It goes on and on and on. And we're very proud of that tradition. Very, very proud of it. So.
That's great, Doug. What role have you played in that, and how has the jazz band been involved?
Well, initially when I started as the director of the band, the thing we did back then was the band would back up the judges, who we have usually 3 judges that come, well-known jazz musicians who are also fine educators, and then they also perform, and our band would back them up on the final concert. And that was kind of my involvement in the beginning, but as Ken said, I became full-time and I became more involved, and then I think I'm not sure how long, 16, 18 years ago, I became director of the festival. And so now we still do that. The band still backs up those artists, but I also manage the entire event. But I have help, a lot of help, because our students really do run it, and we're very proud of that as well. It's a student-run festival. We have 2 student managers who get some of the other students to work under them in the various areas, and they really make it go and maintain that reputation that the festival has for efficiency, and it's very well run. So the students really do it. I'm just person with my name there, but students make the work happen. Yeah, they do.
That's great, Doug. When is the festival coming up for 2012, and who could we expect to be there?
Right, it's going to be this year, February 24, 25, and 26. And our 3 judges for the weekend will be the Jeff Hamilton Trio. Jeff Hamilton is a drummer, and he has a pianist with him, Tamir Hendelman, and a bass player, Christoph Ludi. And you may not know those names so well, but you've heard them many times behind Diana Krall. They're kind of her rhythm section. And so they'll be judging throughout the weekend. And on Saturday night, we'll have the University of North Texas, their 1 o'clock lab band, arguably the most famous collegiate jazz band in the world. They'll be performing. This will be their 3rd time there. And they're going to be with Dennis de Blasio, who's been with us many times, and he's a baritone saxophone player, and trumpeter Frank Green from New York, and our very own Mark Colby, who's part of our jazz studies faculty, will be playing, and they're going to do a tribute to the great Maynard Ferguson. And on Sunday afternoon, we'll have the Clayton Hamilton Jazz Orchestra performing, which the same Hamilton we just mentioned happens to be the drummer in that band as well, and one of the leaders, and it's a fantastic band from Los Angeles, 20 of them, and they'll wrap the festival up on Sunday afternoon, so it could be a great weekend. Some
big names, and great place to be in Elmhurst.
Well, collegiate jazz is with the popularity of jazz on an absolute upswing,
right,
nationally and likely in the world. This is a real opportunity locally to see some amazing performers.
That's right. And throughout the weekend, there will also be 38 college bands performing. So college bands and combos. So it's a lot of music. And we have some people that just come for the whole weekend. You know, it's great.
Well, the mayor alluded to the international travels of the band, Doug, and I wondered if you might just throw out a couple of places you've been that are absolutely indelible in your mind.
Oh yeah, they are. Well, just most recently, last June, we were in South America. We did the first time we've been down there. We were in Chile, and we did a tour of Chile. I made a contact with a jazz school down there in Santiago, one of the teachers there, and they helped coordinate all of our concerts throughout Chile. So that was really, really a wonderful trip. But we've been throughout Western Europe many times, France and Germany and Switzerland, and we've also been to Greece, we've been to Indonesia, we've been probably some places I've forgotten as well, but it's been great. And the band does a major tour most years, and the guys raise the money themselves for it by playing, you know, different performances for dances and for corporate events and things like that. And so the band has really had the chance to see a lot of the world.
It's neat. I know I recently seen you even at a mayoral event. There was a mayoral ball in,
Right.
in neighboring Addison, and
Right.
in front of congressional folks and legislators.
Yeah, they treat it very much like it's they're professionals, and we expect that, you know, and that helps them grow, I think, as individuals too, as they learn what it's like to represent themselves, the college, and when we're traveling the country as well.
Well, and you've had an opportunity to play at some prestigious festivals all over the world.
We have, yeah. The Umbria Festival in Italy, in Perugia, Italy, and the Montreux Jazz Festival in Switzerland, the North Sea Festival in Holland. In Indonesia we did one. So yeah, we really have, and we've been on some big stages at those things, and great experiences, great crowds, yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
There was a little experience a few years back down on the lakefront too, as I recall.
That's right. We were fortunate enough to be invited by Dee Dee Bridgewater to play at the Chicago Jazz Festival on the main stage with her, to back her up on. I think we did 4 tunes with her that night, which was, she's such a promoter of young talent, and it was great for her to invite us to do that. We had her out at the college, at the festival, and also for the summer extravaganza that we do every year. And she says, well, I'm going to have you guys come play with me. And she introduced the band. These are my children. And it was great. A great honor, and of course a great experience, yeah.
Well, I think what's so interesting about the jazz program at the college and is the way it has morphed into more and more and more. I mean, not only your role and involvement, but a jazz studies program, which is a formal educational study, the advancement of the music majors in and of itself. The festival has taken on a life force of its own and become regional, if not a larger than that showcase. And then, as you well know, in 1996, for the college's 125th anniversary, the summer extravaganza was introduced as a one-time event.
It's now happened, what, how many, 15 times or 14?
Whatever 96 to 2012 will be.
But only once,
do the
just
math.
remember
that. We're only going to do it one time, that's right. But that has showcased an amazing number of incredible artists as well.
Dee Dee Bridgewater's been there, Patty Austin, Nina Freeland, Maynard Ferguson. It's been a Clark Terry. It's been a great showcase and a great experience for our students as well, because we have such a fantastic crowd that comes out for that. We usually get, 4,000, maybe 5,000 people. The weather is usually great, although we've dodged a few bullets, as you know. And but it's just another kind of component of the whole program that we do, which I think is an experience that kids in college get at few other places. So it's a wonderful piece to our whole program.
I think that's what's really unique about Elmhurst. I always brag it's not just one thing that makes Elmhurst. And Elmhurst College is the same thing. It's a great liberal arts school that has so many pieces of the puzzle that really, from the arts to fine academic studies to we're going to be talking about some of the theater that takes place there as well later in the show. But it's just it's a sum of the many parts that really make Elmhurst,
Exactly right.
Elmhurst, the city of Elmhurst, and the college very, very unique.
Well, and the integration too. I know you've partnered with the Elmhurst Symphony.
We have.
On occasion, which you share maybe a little bit about that, because
yeah, that was a great experience. At first I was going, I'm not sure how this is going to work, but we did some pieces that we had done with Patty Austin, and when she did them on her recording, they were recorded with an orchestra, strings and all, and a jazz band as part of that. So when they invited us to come and be part of their program, I said, how about if we don't just, we'll play a couple of our own tunes, but how about if we do some things with the strings? And the director looked at me, do you have arrangements? And I said, well, actually we do. So we had the band set up kind of in the back and these strings all around me, and there I am conducting with all these strings, and I'll never forget, it was fantastic. And the singer, sang the things that Patty Austin had done, and it was a great experience and great for the kids, again, to play with those string players like that. And I think it was just a great blending of two wonderful things in town, the orchestra and our music program. So it was a lot of fun. We did that 2 times, maybe 3. Yeah, so it's great every time.
Well, I want to go back to the festival just for a second. There is a website and information.
Yes, if you go to elmhurst.edu and then /Jazz Festival, you'll find the whole website and who's going to be there, bios on them, and pretty soon, starting Friday or so, we'll have the schedule up there of the college bands, because we have to notify them on Friday of who's performing. And you can buy tickets online. It tells you everything about what's going on. So yeah, it's all there.
I think what's interesting about the festival, to go back to a point that we covered briefly a few minutes ago, is that while it is a competition, it's not a cutthroat kind of situation.
No.
And the uniqueness of watching it is the great involvement of the bands watching the other bands perform. Was that your concept in terms of changing that into, instead of some point scoring system and really kind of knocking heads, to just enjoying the moment?
No, actually the people in the music department, and Jim Cunningham was Dean of Students at the time, when they decided to kind of keep the festival going as a freestanding event after the American College Festival ended, which was very much a winner-take-all kind of thing, those people decided, no, let's really shift the concept towards education. So the groups, we do name groups outstanding, and there might be 5 or 6 or 7 big bands that are named as the outstanding bands, but we don't rank them 1, 2, 3, 4. And the same combos, outstanding combos, and a lot of individual awards to musicians. Outstanding trumpet soloist, maybe outstanding trombone soloist, outstanding drummer, whatever it might be. A lot of those individual awards. But the focus is very much on education now, and the judges that we have come in are obviously, they're great musicians and great performers, but they're also very carefully chosen because they're deeply committed to education, and they write critiques, comments for these bands to go back and learn from and become better musicians. And also on Saturday morning of the festival, the judges present a clinic, a workshop for our participants to go to, ask questions, and see their demonstrations about what they might talk about that morning. So it's very heavily on education, and I've nurtured it, I would say, but the concept was in place when I took over the festival. Yeah.
In an era, the mayor and I were talking prior, and you were part of the conversation too, in an era where college students find it difficult to find jobs in their field, this kind of thing, I would guess people watching this program would say, somebody who majors in jazz studies, what do they do with that? So what do they do with that?
Well, that degree is very much a performance degree, and our faculty trains people to be as good a performers as they can possibly be. And as with anything in the arts, and you can probably carry it to other things besides the arts, you have to have the desire in your heart. You're going to be as good as you want to be. And if you go to play somewhere, they're not going to say, "Could we see your jazz studies degree, please?" They're not going to say that. They're going to want to hear you play. So we've had players go on and make their living playing, and we've had other people that work within the music business. Perhaps, like, we've got a great connection at Downbeat Magazine. We've had people go, which is right in Elmhurst. Also, we've had people go and work there, but they continue to play also. So, and other of the people that have gone through it have become writers, you know, writing music, arranging music. They've gone on and made livings doing that. And some have gone on and become teachers at the collegiate level because of what they've gotten from our program. So it's a variety of things. And yes, anytime you try to make a living in the arts, you got to want to do it pretty bad because it's competitive. But we've had lots of people who have gone on and proved that it's possible. And everybody kind of finds their own way.
Whenever you have passion, speaking from somebody that comes from the arts, I opened up a design and print business, and I remember my father first said, are you sure you want to do this? And, but you know, when you love what you do, you find a way to make a buck.
That's right.
And when I think of Elmhurst College Jazz Band, I think of great leadership, and I think of Doug Beach. So, and teaching many kids to go out there and find their passion.
Well, I feel it's important to do that. There's one thing I've kind of always kept in my mind, which I was made aware of. Stan Kenton, the famous band leader, he said one of his famous sayings was, when you get to the top, make sure you send the elevator back down for somebody else. And you always want to try to do that. And there's usually someone there eager to ride to the top, you know, so you try.
Well, I
to
remember a few years back, and it's getting to be more than a few now that I think about it. I was in the York High School gymnasium for a freshman orientation.
Oh, I've been to that before.
And I'm listening to the York High School Jazz Band, and they finish a song, and the director says, and that was an arrangement by Doug Beach, who was in the audience about 4 rows from me. So that's got to be, you know, that's got to be quite a moment too.
Yeah, it is. It's something that I got involved in, was writing music. I was interested in it when I was young in high school. I kind of got started with it and kind of kept going with it, and ultimately ended up starting a publishing company, which you know, a lot of my music goes out to the school market, which that's where I focused. And yeah, it is a kick, you know. And I've had kids come up to me, well, adults now, who said, I played your music, I think, when I was young. You might have, you know, so yeah, it's fun.
Doug, we've got to close this segment. The Jazz Festival I have is February 24, 25, and 26 of 2012, which is not far off.
It's not.
Appreciate you being with us.
Thank you. It's great to be here. Great to be with you both. Thanks for the time.
We've been talking to Doug Beach, Director of the Jazz Band and Jazz Studies at Elmhurst College. We're going to take a short break now, and in our second segment, we're going to go to the theater. The Mill Theater, to be precise. But as we leave this segment, let's listen to the Elmhurst College Jazz Band.
like Elmhurst because it's a small college, it's a small classroom. You know, you get to know your friend, you get to know your professor. So I thought it's about time for me to make a commitment to go back. It's personal fulfillment, and also I believe that with higher education, I would move a lot faster in the company. I'm a very quiet person, but with education, I feel like I can speak up. I can tell people that this is what I know, you know. So before I was always shy away because I was always afraid that people won't listen to me. But now I go to school and I realize that I could say something and people will listen to me. And I think partly because in the small classroom when you talk, a teacher listens to you, you feel more confident. With the degree here, I'm hoping that give me a bigger picture so I can move further in the company. When the company decide to get rid of the old system, I'll be able to change it right away. My company was such appreciated that they said, oh, you already know that you can go and work in there. So that's another big help. Right there, it is a payback.
Welcome back to Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels along with Mayor P.T. Ciani. And in our second segment, we're going to be talking about the wonderful world of college theater. And there's no one better to talk to locally about that than Associate Professor of Theater and Director of the Mill Theater, an innovator, a promoter, and that would be Janice Pohl. And Janice, welcome to Elmhurst Now.
Thank you for the invitation. This is very nice.
Absolutely. I think the audience may not be as familiar with the Mill Theater and Elmhurst Theater as perhaps they ought to be, but can you give us a little recap on theater at Elmhurst College?
I certainly can. There has been theater on the campus for quite a long time. My colleague Rick Arnold did some archiving of our slides, and there were productions that went back into the 30s and 40s easily. So there were productions on campus, but they weren't in formal locations. We were in the basement of Goebel for a while and a number of other venues. And in the 60s, a lumberyard along the railroad tracks was donated to the college, and with this lumberyard came a low building that had a big opening in it. Looked like a picture frame, one of those proscenium arch theater windows. And somebody said this would be a great place to get those theater kids out of the basement and over here for a little while, temporarily. And we are there, and we have taken care of the building well enough that our alums have supported us in doing some improvements, and we like it fine. It does not feel like a temporary place to us, but a nice, intimate place to create some theater. So that's sort of how we got to the Mill Theater. It was a Mill Works building, and so, you know, it's pragmatically named for its history.
Neat.
Yeah.
I know, you know, the theater population may be small, but I think a lot of these folks also study in areas of maybe communications or sciences as well.
We have majors in theater who double major as comm majors. With music, we have a number of folks who have minored in theater who have been music educators, art educators, and so on. So we get a lot of cross sections of students and various disciplines in our program. It's very exciting.
Terrific.
Well, the Mill is a wonderfully quirky place. You already described its history dating back when it was a planing mill, but at the same time, it seats
It's about 160.
About 160,
and it's
right?
very intimate. We're a 3/4 thrust. We've moved out of that picture frame and we've pulled the stage forward, and now we have seats on 3 sides of the stage, and no one's further than 5 rows from the stage. It makes the acting experience very intimate. Students who are used to being part of a cast of 60+ kids in a musical now have to be very vulnerable and near their audience, and you can't hide particularly well. So they learn to really develop their skills. The design team get to delight in making details that can be seen, you know, instead of that old, oh, they'll never see it from the 5th row, you know, everybody will see everything. So it provides some really nice challenges for our students.
At the same time, it has to provide a certain amount of limitations. Are there shows you can't do?
You know, it's difficult to do a second story in that space because our ceiling is, I'm going to forget, if it's 13, 15 feet, either one. It's hard to do a second floor at that height. And so when we did Sweeney Todd recently, we knew that we couldn't use the conventional approach, you know, from what the Broadway production had done and productions in London, where you built a unit that had 2 floors so you could have a stair come down. We had to come up with innovative ways of doing it. So most of the time we look to figure the workarounds and figure out how we can do this without having a second floor. Probably, what's the one, Noises Off, seems to me one of those that's right out the window, because you really have to have that second floor balcony running down the stairs. So I don't know, but you know, now that I've said that, I'm sure my colleagues will come up with a way that we can figure out to do it. So not so much limitations in that. Size of cast, probably. I think we've had as many as 36 or 38 in Three Penny Opera. It was one of those 2 numbers. And it was a little over large, but then they created this massive vocal sound. So it was really thrilling for the Kurt Weill sound.
Terrific. And Janice, how long have you been director at the Mill?
10 years.
Wow.
So yeah, I've taught 10 years at the Mill. My colleague Alan Weiger has been at the program for a long, long, long time, and we made a transition while I was here in which he took over primary responsibility for being chair of the Comm Arts and Sciences Department, and I took care of director of theater at the program.
Neat.
Now, if you major or minor in theater, Janice, do you get beyond the acting experience? Can you direct if you want? What?
Yes.
What does that?
In fact, one of
like?
the things that we pride ourselves on in our program is that we sort of take the liberal arts model of getting a good foundation in a lot of disciplines a step further, and we say that's part of what you do in our theater major. So students learn about acting, they learn about stagecraft, they learn about the history and literature of theater, and then they get to focus on some of these areas. And even though we say to focus, we actually encourage them to do a little bit more, so that the girl who comes and says, well, I see myself as a singer and performer, is, before she knows it, working out her first lighting design and climbing up on the ladders and working the electrics and saying, I never thought I would have done this before. And the student who is determined he's not going to perform comes up with a clever way to be part of a performance because his buddies will pull it into it, and somebody says, oh, we need the 3rd guy for this scene. And so then they get to see things from the other side of the fence. My colleagues and I model this kind of thing. We were very pleased. My design colleague, Rick Arnold, was able to serve as a performer. Somebody said, we need a dad for this show. And so they cajoled and wheedled and, you know, made great bargains with his family, you know, so that he could give up a little more of his time. And then he performed in those roles. And for a production some years prior, I did the scenic design, which is a little out of my element. I'm more of a costume person when I'm in the design realm. And so, yeah, so we model that, and then we ask our students to do the same.
Great. What does the 2012 season look like?
Well, we started our year with a 1680s restoration comedy that was as close to being, you know, the Desperate Housewives of Name That State, Real Housewives. set in the suburban and domestic sphere of London, and we sort of transposed that to a contemporary feel. It was sort of like country club life, and everybody trotted around in 60s costumes and, you know, created scandals hither and yon. So we started the year with that, a student-directed production.
That was the 1680s, you said?
1680s, but we dressed it like it was the 1960s. It was a little saucy, you know. Sort of helped us bridge the gap, so people got it. People got it. It was a little long, and we made the trade-off. We're doing right now a Russian play that's a long play, but we're doing a shorter adaptation, and I mentioned to friends of my mother who came along and said, well, that's a pretty long play, that's a pretty long play. And we said, well, you know, 3 or 4 hours of Russian angst, or three or 4 hours of witty, you know, repartee, you know, about naughty subjects. We decided we'd go with that one as a 3-hour bite, and so we're doing a shorter adaptation of the Russian play Maxim Gorky's The Lower Depths. So it's pretty depressing as it is. So, yep. There you go. Our students came up with a couple of student-directed productions. You asked about students directing, and one proposed Rhinoceros by Eugene Ionesco, and she just did that mid-fall this year. And the next one is Harold Pinter's The Birthday Party, which looks at that sort of Cold War era tension and torture and suspicion in a domestic sphere.
Do you get requests? Do people come up and say, gee, I'd love to have you do?
You know, sometimes we do, and we put them into the hopper, is what I'll say. We've been actually kind of pleased these last 2 years. We've managed not to duplicate much of what we've done before. There are always favorites, I'm sure, and one of those, we're actually repeating a show this year. Little Shop of Horrors is coming up in the spring, and that's a favorite in schools and communities and a lot of the kitschy little theaters that that fill our city. And we haven't done it for a number of years. Alan Weiger did it, and I can't quite remember, but it's over our 10-year limit. We sort of have a self-imposed, if we've done it in the last 10 years, we're not likely to do it for a little while yet. Because while our students are only there for 4 years, a lot of our audience is with us over a long time. You've come to plays over the years, I know, and some of our patrons are very long-term. And so we like to keep it spiced up for them as well.
Is there a show that is a personal favorite of yours that you've never done here?
I don't know that we have a Hamlet at the ready quite yet. That's what I tell you, as cliche as that is, I could see that play over and over and over and over again. You know, it would never bore me. But I don't know. We keep finding favorites. You know, we haven't done enough of the French, so that has to come up, and we haven't done nearly enough new plays by authors of color, and so we're looking at some of those for future seasons and so on. So yeah, so we try and mix it up. Classic plays, obviously we have a musical theater major because the music program is so strong at the campus, and unlike other colleges who have some kind of tension between, because jazz has such roots in musical theater, or musical theater has such roots in jazz. We have a very musical theater friendly relationship with the music program and the instructors. And so we have kids with amazing talents who cross over between those programs. And we do a fair bit of musical theater for our size program. It ended up involving the creation of a dance minor in the last few years. So that's been a nice addition. Yeah, so I don't know, favorite plays.
In the rich theater tradition of metropolitan Chicago, the program at the college and the Mill Theater itself sort of fits in its own kind of niche. Collegiate theater and professional theater, how do they link up in your mind?
One of the things that I experienced both as a young person, a high schooler studying theater in Chicago and going way out of state for college, always ended up going to both community theater things and the really strong regional theaters. So I saw Richard III at the Goodman, and I saw various pieces at the Guthrie, you know, and then saw community theater. And college theater gets to sort of cross to both extremes. You know, the really rich classics, the very family-friendly, the edgy storefront theater pieces, the new experimental pieces, you know, and to take risks. There are programs sometimes that say, oh, can't do Shakespeare because we're not ready yet. And you have to give it a try because otherwise you're not going to grow. So we give those things a try, and that was part of our goal with the Wycherley this year. And we're going to be doing Little Shop, and I know that one of the challenges is how do you do the Audreys, you know, without just recreating what got done before off-Broadway or in the traditional models. And so our design team is very excited to find their own path through. So, yeah.
What's the process that takes a student who decides to get involved with theater, whether they're majoring or minoring or just want to be involved? The whole process across the aisle, if you will, in the scene shop, how does that get parsed out in terms of who does what in preparing for a show?
Well, students will audition for roles, and so that brings them in because that's a familiar path in. It's a fun way to participate. Everybody enjoys being in a cast, that sort of thing. We have a number of students who come in the other door and say, I have federal work study, and I understand you might have some jobs, and I am a major in X, Y, or Z. Can I get a job here? Because this is the only way I'm going to get a little bit of something different in my very busy program. We have had nursing majors who are incredibly busy, but enjoy the fact that they get to do a little bit of work in the costume shop. Or we've had other folks who've worked in our box office area who were speech pathology majors who wanted to do just a little bit of something different. So we have that kind of spectrum. We have our shop hours at a set time, so students who want to be involved can drop in and just throw in and do some work. So we don't do that kind of after school, late night kind of thing. It's in the afternoon, in the thick of the class time, and then we stop so that we can, you know, be civilized and do our homework, because we've got a lot of kids who are very invested in their academic programs, and as they need to be.
I think it's great that we have, you know, the arts and this, you know, the program that works well with music. We just spoke with Doug Beach, and knowing that these programs work so well together, whereas in other organizations they don't. It's really a great thing that our college supports these programs, and that they all work hand in hand, and they actually cross over into nurses and business people and other folks that want to maybe scratch a different itch, and maybe get a little break in their day that enlightens them and makes them a better person. So.
Well, in live theater, an incredible revival. I mean, everything from the Broadway series that's taking place out in the Paramount Arts Theater in Joliet, which is selling out every show they put on, to the opportunity that you present, the collegiate theater, doing things where you don't have to worry about how many tickets you want to sell necessarily in order to decide to do something.
And yet our students are working at figuring out what it takes to sell more tickets. So we have students who are taking the posters out down the street and figuring out new places to put postings online, dealing with our patrons who come to performances and so on, and learning those aspects of it and seeing what they can do to help fill seats and spread the word and so on, which is important.
Now, as a graduate of the college, Mr. Mayor, did you know that the scene shop is haunted?
No.
I'm told it's haunted.
My colleague tells a lovely story. He says, and this, so I have to tell it his way. He said he didn't have the pleasure of meeting this person, and if he did, he would want to shake his hand. The story involves a past professor who was involved in, I'm going to skip parts of it, but he was involved in the tech and the design areas. And this particular building is a 3-story warehouse. It's probably, if you look out from the public library, it's the one that lists just a little, because it's a, you know, it was built to house things. And so that's what it did. It held lumber for the warehouse, and now it holds our theater lumber, costume shop, and props on the 3rd floor. Well, this particular day, one particular day, students were crying, you know, what was wrong. They had had some bad news, and a student who had been into the scene shop already to, you know, get something said, you know, well, what's going on? And was told that this instructor had passed away. And he said, no, I just saw him. He was sitting on the scene shop stairs, and he gave me, you know, these plans, whatever. So the story for a number of years was a very positive story, in that here, you know, the spirit of this person wanted to help, you know, the students who were continuing on. So when I arrived here, you know, ghost story, and kids were afraid to go in there, and and I thought, you can't be afraid of where you work, and here this story is this about this kind, you know, helpful spirit. So I just got in the habit of hitting the bottom of the stairs, and I'd yell up, hi, honey, I'm home, you know, because I was going to be working there, and this was going to be my home. So we had to make peace one way or another. So I haven't been very troubled, you know. And, you know, there is that line in Hamlet about, you know, more things than are dreamt of than in your, you know, et cetera, et cetera. So.
Janice, if people watching us want to know what's happening at the mill, what's the best way for them to find out?
We have 2 possibilities. We've got a nice, easy email, which is mill@elmhurst.edu. The website is elmhurst.edu/EC Theater, THEATRE, and that can give you various links to some of what's going on. We would love to get people's names and addresses so that we can send them our brochure and send them our flyer from year to year, and invite them to come. We are the cheapest ticket on the block, I'd say, nay, in the community. We're still under $10, cheaper than a film, or at least most films. And, you know, live theater. And our students are designing, they're directing, they're stage managing, and they're applying all these great arts tools and life skills in each of these projects. And it's just fulfilling. My mom has one of our family friends is part of the Russian Orthodox community in Chicago, and she says, you have just the best job. You get to work with all these young people doing creative things, and she's so right.
Well, we thank you for being with us on Elmhurst Now tonight, Janice, and we wish you all the best with your projects coming up in the spring.
Good, thank you. We hope to see you.
Thank you. You've been watching Elmhurst Now. I'm Ken Bartels, and for Mayor Pete DeCiani, we want to wish you the best of holidays, and we'll see you again.
My second child has special needs, and I worked with him for 10 years, and I kind of thought I'm pretty good at this, so maybe I missed my calling. So I decided to go back to school and get my master's in early childhood special ed. Originally, I just was going to get a teaching certificate, but when I looked into it further, Elmhurst had this great program that I could do both in 2 years, you know, and it was an adult education program. The classes were all at night, and so I thought, you know, let's do it. I think the hardest part was just making that phone call. Within the first month of starting classes, you're out there in the community, you're working with people. After 2 years of doing it, you really get that confidence. So when you graduate, you really do feel like you're a leader in your field, which is what they told us we would be. And so it's true. It really, really is.
Hi, I'm Elmhurst Police Chief Steve Neubauer. Elmhurst is a great place to live and work. However, we are not crime-free. Many people in our community become victims of crime simply because they did not lock their belongings. I would ask you to do two things. First, lock your car, house, and bike. Secondly, call 911 to report suspicious activity to the Elmhurst Police Department. The Elmhurst Police Department reminds you to lock it or lose it.